Gentlemen. Okay. It's a 6-pill. I've got notes. This is RO number 43. This 6-pill has output and input SWR. When the carrier out of the amp is above 80 watts into the mobile antenna, both my Carl-built amps have good SWR, same antenna. If I drive 400 watts reflect, oh wow. If I drive the amp to 400 watts carrier to reflect, the SWR drops down. The input and output SWR is all good power levels when hooked up to my dummy load. Okay, kind of comparing apples to oranges here. I think might have dirty harmonics, so I hooked up my ICOM 7300, same result. Also, the power output is 200 to 300 watts less than my Carl-built 4-pill, of course. And my Carl-built 8-pill, interesting. Same drive level inputs. I have the drive with the amp with either a 60 or 100 watt radio. I returned to the builder to try to get it fixed. He replaced the output tuning capacitor with the tuning tube. After receiving it back, the high SWR issues are still there. I rebuilt the input and output combiners at type 51 and moved the tuning tube for maximum power output. Still 200 watts less than my Carl-built. Nothing I did seems to lower the SWR. Please rebuild your stuff. Okay. So I talked with this guy on the phone, and what he told me and explained to me is that when he keeps his dead key low, turn the carrier up, then a bunch of reflect appears. It doesn't matter as soon as he gets over about 100 watts carrier. And then the input reflect goes way up. So. All right, no problem. Let's jump into this and let's see what we figure out. Let's take the lid off. It's not bad looking. That's really not all that bad looking. It's got 16 DO8 Toshibas in it, or HGs in it. Got the right caps there, and right caps here, and that's a little low, that's a little low, and these are wrong. These are 390s. Turn ratios and the combiners are It doesn't look that bad, yo. I mean, the solder work is impeccable for sure. It's got all the right parts in all the right places. Definitely does. Well, let's hook it up and let me turn my spectrum analyzer on here. All right. So I just got off the phone with the customer. Long conversation. We got way off of amplifier topic. I'm telling him I told him the same thing I'm going to tell all you guys. He is making an apple and an oranges comparison, okay? Or like tomato to an orange. This amplifier we got to treat as its own little unit, and I understand his setup in his mobile is his setup in his mobile. Okay. We are working on a sealed 50 ohm balanced load that's grounded and bonded, and everything's proper electrical lengths and everything is perfect. The mobile is not that. The mobile is, anything in the vehicle is completely different. I don't care how much you play with your tallywhacker and your analyzer and it says 50 and 0 and whatever on your analyzer. It doesn't, all that gets thrown out the window when you start applying power to it, right? And I also understand that he's got amps by another manufacturer. This is built by a completely different person, and he's not seeing the same output power. He's not seeing the same amperage consumption. He's not seeing, the same SWR. So therefore, in his mind, it's not right. This is tricky. This is a tricky situation to walk into. So we're going to run it through its little paces. We're going to be at 12 volts. 12 volts here on this meter. And then up here on our striker, it's also resting at literally 12.1 volts. Okay. This is a 1,000 watt in peak, 1,000 in average, bird, whatever you want, because it's not even a real measurement. And a 5 watt slug in reverse back from the bird, 10,000 watt dummy load. The reason I've been starting to say whatever you want, literally average RMS bird watts, whatever you want to call it, is Bird never designed this meter to work on AM. They designed it to work on AM, CW, and FM. They had to develop a peak kit to make it read appropriately on AM. So I just put this up here because I want everybody to say, well, yeah, I show it running. I show it running in all modes. That's the reason that this 3 meter setup is the most copied set of things off this entire workbench. We are comparing apples to apples and to a tomato. You can have a perfectly flat input SWR, like perfect input reflect. You got to remember, we're living in a smarter era than bygone yesteryear. Bygone yesteryear is where we had the Cobra 2029. It had an SWR bridge in it, but we didn't really trust it that much, so nobody ever bothered to use it. They'd hook up whatever coax link they needed to get the thing to run, and they'd be done with it. In today's world, every frickin' radio that is produced, and in this situation it's a 655 or whatever, or a 666, we've got a little bridge on the front of the radio, and when we run this box, this bridge says everything is great. Now when we go to put this in his vehicle, everything is not so great with this box, this particular amp. This little bridge inside the radio, SWR bridge, we're going to use this radio because this is what I have. It produces the same amount of watts. The final end on it is fairly close. I'm using the SWR meter. Is telling him that he has a problem, but then the SWR goes down as the power level goes up. But then he has other boxes that are roughly either smaller or bigger than this one. And it is showing him that those amplifiers' inputs are great. So therefore, this thing has to have a problem. Well, I've run this thing. I see what's going on with it. We have to be careful. I got to be very careful what I choose to say, and 2, the way I go about sharing or conveying the information to you. I told him I'm going to give it a whack. We're going to change the tune around to something that I kind of like. He does primarily sideband operation. Okay? So we're going to change the bias circuit a little bit. This is the way I would set my bias up on most of these boxes. The thing that I have noticed though here recently, I've had a couple different instances where people have come here with their equipment, and I was so grateful that they brought their vehicle that they put the amplifier in. Because we'd hook the amplifier up on the workbench and everything would work great. Then we go put it in there. In the last instance, it was a Ford Ranger. We went and put the amplifier in a Ford Ranger, and the thing would oscillate, the relay would stay locked, the input SWR was off through the chart, and the power output of the box was way down low. And it all came back to a bias issue, because once we grounded out turned this into Class C, so we bypassed these resistors, all the problems went away. Well, then we changed and we went to a different relay and we did a couple different things, and it still was doing it. So then we ended up changing the amount of current that the entire circuit could see, and the problem stopped. And it was the same situation that's presenting itself here. Sometimes your amplifier, remember, a lot of these are just home-built boxes that we're playing with now. They're not at a commercial standard, commercial level, commonly universally accepted pattern of assembly. Sometimes some of the components that might be being used are just slightly different enough, or the way that the wires are wound through a choke are slightly different enough to where we have a problem in a mobile application, but when you're working on it on the workbench, you don't have a problem. Okay. Disclaimer aside, We're going to give this a whack, and I'm not making him any guarantees. I'm going to say, hey dude, let's try this. Now in turn, I probably will go out and hook this up in my own setup in my truck and try it there. And if I don't have a problem with it there, then I'll feel comfortable with sending it along. So the first thing I came in here and I checked, well, let's just go through all the paces here real quick, you and me together. We're on 12 volts. We know what our meters are reading. So this is what we're putting into it for drive. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2, about 80 peak watts. We're on 12 volts. Our pass-through tune, hello, 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 is really good. Everything's good. So let's go ahead and we'll run the amplifier. We'll turn the amplifier on. Amplifier keys up. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2. We kind of hit a brick wall at about 600 watts. Our input tune. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2. Hello, 1, 2. We're going to spend a little bit of time here. Let's change our angle so we don't have the glare. Okay. Now we can see both meters now. We can see the face of the striker. We've got 1 bar, but we've got almost no reflect. Hello, 1, 2, and it's jumping up to 2 bars. So now we'll run the dead key up even further. So we'll max out our dead key. The amplifier is dead key in 200 watts. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. We have a fairly decent input tune going on. So now we'll run our dead key down. Hello, 1, 2. Let's bring this all the way down. So now we're down to about a half a watt. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Swinging up to 2 bars. All right. Now let's go over here. And let's look at the watt meter. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. We're making 600 watts worth of shmoo. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2. Hello, 1, 2. We're making about 100 watts average. Let's go to sideband. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2. Uh-oh. Hello. Why do I have no transmit on sideband all of a sudden? Hello, hello, hello. Got it on AM. Hello, 1, 2. Hello, 1, 2. Oh, did I turn the hello, hello? What going on with my fancy ass D-rail radio to where it no work on sideband? Oh, I know. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2. I forgot to turn the variable power up on the striker radio. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. All right. Seeing the same amount of power out of it. All right. So now, let's go back to AM so we have a stable carrier to work with. Turn our variable power back down on our radio. Let's just make this thing dead key, let's say 100 watts. There, it's about 100 watts worth of carrier. Now let's look at our spectrum analyzer. This is what we're putting in it for signal. Okay. This is what we're getting out of it for power. These little spikes here, they don't really normally would concern me that much, because let's look at how far they are down on the spectral chart. Hello, 1, 2. What does bother me is that second harmonic and the third harmonic. Hello. Let's go up here and look at our reference line. Hello. Now we're all the way up at negative 17. So we have some issues. First issue I see is that we are not seeing enough power out of this for the amount of drive we're putting into it. We're just not. So it tells me that something in the output network is not tuned properly, and we've compensated for that with the input network. because we have a fairly decent input tune. When we overcompensate on the input network for a bad output tune, that's when we start seeing some weird stuff go on in the mobile. And then all of a sudden we're having to do weird stuff with coax lengths. And you know, the meter on the front of the Striker or your 666 or whatever radio starts giving you some weird stuff. You start seeing some weird stuff. It's when the output side of the amplifier is not properly resonant, and then you start changing stuff on the input. Now I can't help but notice he's got 390s. The guy that built this has got 390s here. These are 390 picofarad a piece, each one of these caps. They should be a little bit higher. We're going to change that around, and then we're going to watch what it does. And then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to change the output network a little bit to see if at 12 volts we can get it to do more power. And maybe that'll change our input, and maybe we'll see these harmonics go away. All right, let me do some frickin' magic off camera. I'll be back. Okay. Let's come over here to where we're straight on the bird meters. This took a little bit of doing. Took a little bit of messing around with it. We went to 500s here, dropped down to 100 picofarads here, slid our input tuning cap or output tuning cap in. We took a half a turn out here, and this is what we have as a result. I'm not perfectly happy, but this is where we're going to start. Okay. So let's reestablish our baseline for measurement here. Hello, audio, 1, 2, 1, 2. All right, same amount of watts. Now let's slide over here so we're straight on the face of the radio. We'll see that we're still at 12 volts. Lock this down so we don't walk away. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, we're still at 12 volts. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Not at 2 bars here anymore, we're at 1, and that's down at almost perfectly flat. Like I said, I'm still not happy, and I have zero faith in what I've done for adjustments here until we can try it in a non-50 ohm perfectly balanced environment. This is what I think is interesting. This is all done with just changing the input tune cycle around. Once again, I want to stress this to everybody. There's a lot of different ways to skin this cat on the input side and the output side. But we'll play with it over here. So check this out. Same drive, same everything. Hello, hello, 1, 2. Now we're seeing 850 instead of 600 at a brick wall. We're seeing 850. Hello, 1, 2. Hello. All right. Here's the fun bit. Amp off. Radio. Amp on. Now, without breaking away, I back the camera up some more. Let's turn our power supply on. Let's reach down here. And this guy likes 14.5, 14.4 or something like that. So we'll set the power supply at 14.4. We'll wait for the radio to, or the batteries and the capacitors and everything to slowly charge to 14.4. We'll see what happens. We're 14.3 on the power supply, and we're waiting. And we're waiting. And we're waiting. And we're waiting. And we're still waiting. 0.2 of a volt makes a big difference. I don't think so. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. All right, so now that second box came up, but we've now dramatically increased our drive. Let's check this out over here. So not playing games, let's go straight, or not straight on it. There we are. Now we're straight on it. Amplifier off. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now we're up to about 110. Hello, 1, 2. Picked up a few more watts there. All right, let's see what happens here. Hello, 1, 2. Okay, we're on the stop peg. Now we're going to go up 2x. So when the needle hits here in the middle, which is directly between the 40 and the 60, a big hash mark there, that's 1,000, 12, 14, 16. Are we going to get around 16? No, because we're not having enough drive. But hello, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now we're on 1,400 watts. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2. So let's come over here, take a look at the spectrum one more time. Is this the winning combination? I don't really know. I know this much. I'm going to set this aside for now. And then I'm going to put a different connector on here. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to hook this up. We're going to see what this does in my truck. And I'll be back. I'll let you know what the end test results are. And we're going to keep hammering at this until we get it. Well, I thought I had this figured out. So I take it out and I run it in my truck, and I don't have any problems with it as long as I kept the dead key really low, okay? And then we come back in here and we can see that we can replicate this again on a workbench. So, as you've noticed, transformers are different now. So let's start out with a low dead key. You see how that's just our, and then we start bringing our, and here come our harmonics again. Those harmonics are showing up as a high output SWR. Of course, the antenna acts like a choke, right? So I thought, well, maybe, just maybe, that these output transformers are type 43. So I changed those. Now, I have changed all the capacitance on the input transformers multiple different times. Changed the capacitance here on the input, changed the input inductor coil to try and get it to match to lay down right. It's not doing it. The output, I've got it tuned up. Slide that back in. Hello, 1, 2. Now we're about 500 watts. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2. But look at our second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh harmonics here. Hello, 1, 2, 1, 2. That's too much. It's way too much. So I thought I had it figured out, but I don't. So now I threw the last thing at it, which would have been the output transformers. I know mine are all type 61. I built them in-house, right? I just, so I called the customer. I said, I've had this happen one other time, or no matter what I did, I couldn't get the harmonics to go away. So at some point we have to embrace the fact that we're using Chinese components, right? And we might have a transistor that's doing some weird shit. The transistor's still working, and we're still producing power, but it's doing a bunch of other weird stuff that I can't compensate for with tuning on the outside. So I said, how would you feel about us removing the transistors, doing 2 at a time? Like, do these 2, try it, do these 2, try it, and do these 2. At least we can figure out which pair we have the problem with. I can make the input tune match. With enough inductance and capacitance, you can make anything match. We all know that. I think that there's a problem. At some point, we have to embrace the fact that there might be something wrong with the transistors themselves. I mean, I'll pull them out, we put them on the gain checker, and they're going to show us good gain. But then when we actually go to run them, in the real world, we're seeing a bunch of garbage that we're not supposed to be getting. The circuit around the transistors is supposed to only be resonant in a small bandwidth. Well, apparently we're producing harmonics across this much bandwidth, and what we need is only that much. If the circuit is a trap and we're still managing to overcome that trap, like I said, I've had this happen on one other box where I changed everything in the box, input, transformers, capacitors, everything. And I finally was like, well, the only thing it could be is the pills. I changed the pills out, and all of a sudden, boom, the box ran perfectly. And the guy's still running it to this day. At some point, you just have to go, okay, we can change all the parts around the heart as much as we want if there's something wrong with the heart. And identifying which one of them is that's causing our problem, or multiples. So, needless to say, customer says don't put these transformers back in. He's got an affection for the bigger transformers, so we're going to leave those in place. But before we are done, we are definitely going to do a power wire upgrade. I'm just trying to hunt the harmonics at this point, right? This is type 61. This is type 61. These are type 61. This is type 61. We should not be having this problem that we're having. So the only other thing it could be is there's been a fault in the transistors. At some point, we just have to accept if you've tried everything else, it has to be the pills. So I think we're at that point. I'm going to lift these two out first. We're going to try it, see if we still have the harmonics. If we do, no big deal. I'll set the transistor aside. Put two more in here, see if we still have the problem. If we do, no big deal. Set the transistor aside. And then we'll try these. If we still have the problem, then we know that it's got to be something else in the circuit. And no one's out any money. I've still got 6 good transistors, right? So we'll start there. I'll have to actually do the work. I'll be back. This friggin' thing. Okay. All right, so as you can see, I'm now starting to question everything. Change the transistors, we're having the same results, so it's not the transistors. And so then I thought, well, let's go actually look at the only part that's left that's not controlled, because we've changed this. This has been modified. This has been tested. Changed inductor, changed output to, it's the same. We're having the same results. I'm getting the same amount of power, but still with an unbelievable amount of harmonics that I can't really explain. So I thought, well, let's give this a little bit of a test, right? So we've all heard of the Sharpie test, where we take the Sharpie and we drag it across the ferrite. Well, type 43, because of the permeability and the coating, or whatever that's on the top of the 43, traditionally, and I want to point this out, traditionally, has always floated on top like this. You see how sharp the marker is? The Sharpie marker, how it sits right up on top of the... See that? Versus this. Okay, believe it or not, there's Sharpie on this one. It sinks in. Type 61, it sinks in. This is an old school trick. Now here recently they did change the material make, right? And I thought that that was part of our problem here, because if we look at the output transformers, we'll see that I did the Sharpie trick on them. See how that's sitting up nice and proud? Now I'll do the Sharpie trick to one of my transformers. See how it just disappears? Bright and shiny. Sinks right in. Okay, so it's a quick way to identify, right? But recently they've changed the ferrite mix. So I was like, okay, this is telling me that this has got a different type of ferrite in it. We don't know what it is. Maybe this is where our problem's at. I'm just guessing. So let's grab the LCR meter and let's take a quick measurement. So this reads 3.6 unihenries. Okay. This is the one that I think is type 61. This is the type, I think, type 43, possibly. But this meter tells all, right? And we'll see how it affects the unihenries. So 3.1 unihenries. This is where shit gets weird. .3. So 3.6, 3.2, 2.3. It's a full third less. Now is that a significant difference? Yeah, no. Yeah, no. It's a full 1 unihenry less than the other ones. We'll notice that the wire length and all the components that we have here are all the same. So it's not like we've massively changed the wire length or the lead length coming off the transformer or anything. It's all the same. So I thought, well, we're this far down the rabbit hole at this point, and I am going to crack this nut. It's just the way I roll, right? I'm not going to like give the guy with the box back. Oh, can't figure it out. I want to know why. And so you start going back in that annals in your brain of, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. So we're just double checking. We're just moving through the paces. And I mean, ultimately, you'd want to have everything completely balanced, right? That's the goal here. That 1 unit Henry difference, is that going to break in the entire circuit? No. 2.6. This is type 61, by the way. .6. This wire length's a little bit longer, so I bet we're going to be at 2.7. Or not. 2.6. I measured all of these, by the way, and these are all within 1/10 of each other. So we know for a fact it wasn't these. We just dismissed that from our brain. Just measuring how the wire is inducting through the transformers. So I'm going to put my transformers in here because I don't have any extra fat boy ones. I mean, I'm sure over in that pile of stuff over there I might have 2 or 3, but I'm just going to go ahead and drop these in because I've got them here. I know what they are. They all match the same. And yeah, so we'll see. We'll see what happens now. Well, okay. Still a little unsure what caused the problem to go away, but I put it in my truck and it runs great now. There's no reflect either on the input of the radio or when I run the dead key up to a couple hundred watts. So we're going to send it back, and hopefully this fixes the guy's problem. If not, we'll do something else, but there ain't nothing like changing 80% of the components inside of an amplifier, and then all of a sudden, magically, the problem stops. So I'd like to believe that it was the input issue, these input transformers being off. I'm sending all these parts because, well, yeah. Anywho, let's wrap this up. This is a 1,000 watt slug in peak, 1,000 average 5 watt slug in reverse back from the bird, 10,000 watt dummy load. At 012, we're all the way jacked up on 14 volts at the moment. At 120 some watts in at peak. At audio. At 012. Well over 500 bird. Well over 1,000 watts peak. I'll turn on the sideband delay. Now let's run it on sideband. At 012. At 012 audio. 1 meter says 1,000, the other one says 800. So that's that. It's still showing a little bit of harmonics on the spectrum, but nothing like what it was. It's working in my truck. So I'm gonna take this and run. I don't get it, man. Every single thing in here is spot on the money now. It's got all the good parts in it. It's odd. I don't know if maybe it's the coax, the little mini coax this guy used. I don't know. I've checked every cap, every part, every wire, every resistor, every combiner. Retune the output inductors, new input inductor, all in new input capacitance. I mean, everything is flat as a doornail. There. Oh, still in sideband mode. Hello, 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. 1 bar here, 1/4 of a watt up there. It's good. I don't know what to say other than let's try it. That's all we can do. I'm at the end of my rope. I can't say definitively the problem is fixed, but I can say definitively it runs fine in my truck. So we'll roll with it from there. Well, gentlemen, this has been a long, drawn-out story on just a little 6-pill. I feel like I've been chasing my tail now on this thing for a long, long time. Let's get everybody all framed up. Big shout out to Penna Labs. They gave me a super hookup for one of my customers today on a whole bunch of 15s. That's 15,000s, by the way. Big shout out to XS, Siglant, McMahon Bird, Coaxial Dynamics. A big thanks to my friends down in Patreon. And a big thanks to every single one of you guys. Put the tin on it. Let's see what it does. Gentlemen, RO number, where am I at? 43. And we're moving on. Moving on up to the side. Gentlemen. Okay. It's a 6-pill. I've got notes. This is RO number 43. This 6-pill has output and input SWR. When the carrier out of the amp is above 80 watts into the mobile antenna, both my Carl-built amps have good SWR, same antenna. If I drive 400 watts reflect, oh wow. If I drive the amp to 400 watts carrier to reflect, the SWR drops down. The input and output SWR is all good power levels when hooked up to my dummy load. Okay, kind of comparing apples to oranges here. I think might have dirty harmonics, so I hooked up my ICOM 7300, same result. Also, the power output is 200 to 300 watts less than my Carl-built 4-pill, of course. And my Carl-built 8-pill, interesting. Same drive level inputs. I have the drive with the amp with either a 60 or 100 watt radio. I returned to the builder to try to get it fixed. He replaced the output tuning capacitor with the tuning tube. After receiving it back, the high SWR issues are still there. I rebuilt the input and output combiners of type 51 and moved the tuning tube for maximum power output. Still 200 watts less than my Carl-built. Nothing I did seems to lower the SWR. Please rebuild your stuff. Okay. So I talked with this guy on the phone, and what he told me and explained to me is that when he keeps his dead key low, turn the carrier up, then a bunch of reflect appears. It doesn't matter as soon as he gets over about 100 watts carrier. And then the input reflect goes way up. So, all right, no problem. Let's jump into this and let's see what we figure out. Let's take the lid off.